Good evening, everyone. It is Saturday, November 1st. Well, I'm finally uploading the video that I've been promising. I know I've been slacking, but this is a video explaining the new and hopefully improved convective outlooks from the Storm Protection Center. Now, I know I've told you this before, but just a little review. We have several National Weather Service offices all across the lower 48s and the entire United States, actually. Then in Oklahoma, in addition to those offices, we have what's called the Storm Prediction Center. They basically exist to provide guidance for the local offices. Well, and of course, we utilize them a lot ourselves. They are the guys that have master's degrees, they're experienced, they know what they're doing, and they basically provide guidance for severe weather forecasting all across the lower 48s. They are the ones that issue the tornado and severe thunderstorm watches. And in addition, they also issue what we're getting ready to talk about now, the convective outlooks. Many of you have watched TV or you've seen my posts and you've heard the people on TV or you've read me talk about the different risk areas. We have a slight risk, we have moderate risk, and then we have the high risk, right? Well, there's been some changes, and they're not overly substantial changes, but I think they are notable changes, and it's something that we need to take a look at so you can give you a better understanding of how to interpret these outlooks. So, used to, it was like this. We had C-text, we had slight, we had moderate, and we had high. I'm not sure how well you can see those words down there. But the C-text basically means to go look at the discussion beneath the map that they would use to read about the threat of severe weather. And it was usually just like 5% probabilities. Okay, sounds confusing, right? Well, that's the point. What they've done, instead of using the word C text and just plotting them on the board, they've now replaced that with a new risk area called marginal. And the marginal is basically what it means, a marginal threat of severe weather, not even high enough to be categorized as a slight risk. So let me just give you a little example here. Okay, this was an outlook that was issued some time ago, I don't know when. We have two slight risk areas, and then we have those words C-text. C-text here in Florida, C-text up here in the northern plains. Basically, that means, like I said, the risk on that day was too low in these areas, at least according to the SPC, to be categorized as a formal severe weather risk. So C-text, that means to go look at the discussion and to read about it, and it would explain that whatever, it was too low to be categorized as a slight risk, but if you could go down and read the discussion, it would talk about a marginal threat of severe weather. I know that's all confusing and stuff, but what it would look like now is this. Instead of having the word C-text, there would actually be an official marginal risk area of severe weather. You've never heard them talk about this on TV before because it's new, and this is one of the new changes that they have made to the outlooks. So there's a marginal risk, and then there is a slight risk. Like I said, it used to just be a slight risk. Now it's marginal, and then it's slight. A slight is more like a standard general risk of severe weather. Marginal means low end. It could happen, but or something could happen at least, but it's a relatively small and marginal threat. Slight risk is still not overly high, but it's a basic is the best way to put it. It's a standard threat of severe weather. And now, this is the other change they have made. You see this area right here? It's called enhanced. So now we have marginal, then slight, and now we have this new category called enhanced, an enhanced risk of severe weather. See, one of the issues is the term slight, that's a broad term. The slight risk is a that's a broad category, because you can have, when you look at the probabilities, which I really don't want to get into because it just makes it even more confusing, but when you would look at the probabilities that the SPC would issue, you could um, you could see that tell whether or not it was a slight risk, I mean a low end slight risk and a high end slight risk. Well, a lot of days you would see a high end slight risk, but it wasn't very well defined, obviously, because there's there was no they didn't have this enhanced category. So now they've added that, and basically it's kind of in between a slight risk and a moderate risk. Um, you've heard us talk about the moderate risk a lot of times. When we've had those, moderate risk can mean some pretty serious stuff. Well, the enhanced risk is basically, like I said, in between the slight and the moderate risk. One step higher than the slight, but it's when the threat is not quite at the threshold to be at the moderate risk category. So that's basically what the enhanced risk means. One step higher than the slight, one step lower than the moderate. And again, that's because this term slight risk, this is the best way of explaining it. That's because the term slight risk can be very broad, and sometimes people do not take it as serious as they should be, because that term can be very broad. So just another look. This is April 27, 2011. You have your slight risk, you have your moderate risk. That's a pretty serious threat of severe weather. And then you have your high risk. High risk is relatively rare, and it's the one you never want to see. It usually means a lot of problems. So again, this was back in April 27th, 2011. Well, now let's take a look at this. This is what that outlook would look like today with these new outlooks. And you could see, instead of just the slight, the moderate, and high, we would also have the marginal risk, the slight risk, the enhanced risk, the moderate risk, and the high risk. So basically what you need to know is the changes that have been made is the addition of these two risk areas called marginal and enhanced. Marginal is when there is a low end threat of severe weather, so low to the point that it's not even categorized as slight. It's not even at the threshold for a general slight risk. When you have a marginal risk, basically that means something could still happen, but the chances are relatively low. You don't want to let your guard down, but the chances are relatively small. Then we still have the slight risk, which means there's a general threat of some severe weather in your area. That's the best way to put it. Enhanced risk means, okay, it's a little higher than normal, basically. The threat is a little higher than normal, and something that you really need to be paying attention to pretty closely. You should always pay attention closely when there's a threat of severe weather regardless, but the enhanced risk means the threat's somewhat higher than normal. And then the moderate risk, we all know what that means. That's usually when we get a lot of our big severe weather days, when we see good amount of damage, and moderate risk can really lead to a lot of problems, it seems like. And then you have your high risk. Your high risk, that's one you never want to see. That's usually means tornado outbreak, significant damaging winds. Usually means there's going to more than likely be a lot of problems and a lot of issues when you see the high risk, and even sometimes when you see the moderate risk or even the enhanced risk. Sometimes you could be talking about strong tornadoes, a lot of hail, and a lot of wind. And so basically the SPC is trying to make their products more clear and easier to interpret for the general public. I don't know how well I did explain. I don't know how good of a job I did explaining these to you on the video. I'm trying to explain it as best I can, but anyhow, so just the main thing is, instead of just slight, moderate, and high, we now have a marginal risk, one step lower than the slight risk. We have slight risk, and then we have the enhanced risk, and then we have a moderate risk, and then we have a high risk. So the enhanced risk and the marginal risk have now are new additions to the severe weather outlooks. Again, we're talking about the severe weather outlooks that you'll see them talk about on TV, that you'll see me talk about. So, alrighty, well, I tried to explain it as best as I can. I know it's kind of confusing. If you have any questions, just please feel free to contact me, send me a message on Facebook, and we'll try to make it, I'll try to make it as easy to understand as possible. Thank you very much, and have a great evening.